So close I ain't, so close on, so close I ain't, so close I ain't, so close on. Thank you guys for coming back again. I know we're here again with Chad Anfinson, and it's been amazing. If you haven't heard anything about the elder care, housing, the industry, you're in for a treat. You're going to get some good gems today, and I'm urging you to go back and listen to the first section because if you missed that, what's the point? So go back last week, listen to that, come back again because we have a few more questions, and I'm just going to dive right in because your time is precious, and I want to get as much from you as I possibly can because I think it's great stuff.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the, if we talk about challenges and lessons learned, you've been in this industry for over 2 decades. You are the authority in this space. Let's be real. Like, if it happens in this space, you probably know about it, know it's coming, or helped implement it, install it, dealt with it in some way, shape, or form. That being said, the elder care industry has faced some huge challenges, especially during the pandemic. In those kind of times when you have a black swan event or just something that shocks the economy, what are some of
hmm
the lessons you've learned from periods like that one?
Well, we're a need-driven business, right? And our culture has set it up to be so. So, the one thing that I learned about during COVID was is that we had to become really efficient, primarily because in the assisted living world and the independent living world, we weren't allowed to move people in during a certain time frame. And then also during that time, we had all these structures set up where we had to keep our social distancing and families still wanted to see their loved ones, right? So it was a very difficult time. But what I learned was is that if you can get through that, you can get through almost anything, right? Because that was so difficult, not only from a personal level, being in this business, but also too on a financial level, right? And again, we had to become very efficient in our business practices to keep the doors open, extremely efficient. And again, that's where you take real strong looks at these key performing indicators. So, definitely learn that. But being a needed driven business, it did set us up for a little more success than some other businesses. Um, you know, because hospitals were still discharging patients to nursing home rehabs, and rehabs were still trying to discharge to assisted livings, right? Or to memory care because they're trying to their business is based on flipping those beds. So, and our business is trying to bring them in so that we can provide assistance to them and maintain them in that bed for as long as safely possible. So, being a need driven business, we had a little bit of a leg up on versus other types of housing, is what I would say.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. So, if I'm a new operator or a new investor getting into this space, what are some of the common mistakes, pitfalls that you see new operators, the newbies getting into this space that they should be worried about, or things that you've seen that maybe we should pay attention to a little more?
Um, Letting your competitor dictate where your rent rate is.
Whoa. Please say that one more time for the people in the back. That was powerful. Wow.
Your competitor should not dictate where your rent rate is. We're talking about two different scenarios. You know, I don't know what type of capital my competitor put up to build their building. I have no clue. I don't know if it's a private equity group that came in. I don't know if it's a consortium of investors that are expecting an X return on their investment. I have no clue about what they're doing or how they got established. I really don't.
Right.
So therefore, their rent rate is going to be at a different level than mine, right? I might have come in differently. I might have gotten my land cheaper. I might have gone into a property that's already in existence. So there's a lot of factors in there. The one thing that I would tell newbies coming into it is, again, let's take a real good look. Let's build a budget. Let's run that pro forma. What number are we trying to get to? Because those numbers might be different. If it's just me by myself and I'm the only investor, my number is going to be different than your number, who may have 5 or 6 investors, or you may be purchased. You may be part of more of a public group that is calling the shots. That is saying our expectation is that we hit a 30% return. So your rent rate's going to be higher, right? Um, Again, I think newbies kind of make that mistake. They do a SWOT analysis, or they do a competitive analysis, and they go, "Hey, this area is getting $6,500 a month on average per rent." Okay, that does that mean I can get it? Does that mean I should get it? Right? So that's one. The second one is and this one's kind of a little more closer to my what I fear, or this is closer to me having fears about where the industry could go, is the fact that um, large investment groups, I mean, large, uh, BlackRock, State Street, Hathaway, Berkshire Hathaway, they own a lot of beds, a lot of units within the senior housing portfolio, lots. With that being said, the ones that they own are typically large monstrosities, and they have all of the amenity rooms that you could think of. Um, with that, of course, their rent rate's going to be higher. They have 150 units. They have a full, true chef. They have multiple lines of labor to oversee uh, first line staff, right? So everything they do is more expensive, and that is a trickle down to the consumer. Newbies coming in thinking, "Oh, that's the only way that I can operate in this business is to build one of these big monstrosities. I can't afford to do that." Ah, that's bonkers. Yes, you can. You just have to. You don't have to be that big to be the best. You really don't.
Right.
It's period. Um, you can build 16 units and you can have a very great margin, and you can do very well financially just for yourself. You can acquire buildings that are maybe efficiently or not running efficient enough, and the efficiencies and how you need to get there without cutting quality. So I think newbies kind of look at it and they see the new kid on the block and they're like, "Oh my goodness, did you see that place? It looks like the Taj Mahal. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. Oh my, it's so big. I couldn't imagine. I don't think I could ever get into that business." That's crazy. It's crazy talk.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. So, speaking of operating and then being efficient and all that, so I know your business models up to 32 unit with assisted living and the memory care, and on some of the facilities, you guys added like independent living and all that. So,
Mhm.
seems like you kind of limit yourself on the unit counts
Yeah.
versus 100, 150. What's the main reason on that? Just like a, can we give it touch
Yeah.
base with that real quick?
When we looked at it and said, we think there's a sweet spot as it pertains to the amount of labor in relation to the number of residents, right? And labor to revenue, if you watch it over the next 5 years, is going to become a very, very important metric to keep up with. Uh, in 2010, and I could have been earlier or so, I think I was running somewhere around a 33 to 35% labor to revenue. So that's just basically short for those that are listening. 35% of all my revenue was going to pay labor of some form. And this was in buildings that were somewhere between 75 and 120 units of doorknobs. Now, if we could get to in a 32 unit, we would love to get to 35%, but we can't. But what we can do is we can get somewhere between 40 and 45%. I can run 32 units identically to how I run 16 units. there might be one or two little changes, but outside of that, I might increase by 1 FTE, maybe one and a half, right?
Mhm.
So, but as when I grow larger than that, when I get larger than that, then we start talking about having to bring on staff, not so much on the caregiving side, but on that middle management side, right? And the middle management side, we're bringing on salaries that don't equate to revenue. They're not driving revenue in. We're extracting from revenue. So I would much rather, what we said was is, at 16 units or 32 units, we can operate at this level, and we can use more of a universal labor model. We should empower caregivers to also be part of an activity or an engagement plan. I don't know why we don't. Other than the bigger buildings, hire an engagement director who has an assistant who then goes out and puts on a class. 9 times out of 10, it's something on the TV, or it's, bingo. Come on. Well, these are things that we're adding to the labor that are basically trickling down to the resident, and the resident is paying for those. It's increasing their rent rate, right? So apples to apples, when I tell people, especially if people are calling us about a franchise or they're calling us about investment or what have you, apples to apples, if I just looked at numbers, not the grand total number, but I looked at the percentages, apples to apples, I will beat that 120 unit building hands down. Apples to apples. If we're looking at percentages, I'll beat you on labor to revenue. I'll beat you on, probably wind up beating you on raw food cost. I'll wind up, just because we're less people, I'll beat you on NOI if we're looking at a percentage from what my NOI is to my gross profit or my gross revenue. Apples to apples all day long. So
Mhm.
that's how we looked at it. We felt like, again, a 16 unit or up to a 32 unit assisted living can be very, very financially rewarding, not only on the business cash flow side and the profit side, but also on the real estate side, as well as we could find more people that could afford to get into that model versus the Taj Mahal model.
Mhm.
Administrators that have worked for 20 years as an administrator, working for a publicly shared company that provides, the same business, assisted living, thinking that there's no way I could ever afford to get into a $10 million building like the one I'm running. It doesn't have to be a $10 million building. And really, that $10 million building, they don't own that $10 million building, right? So I can get you, we can talk about it and say, here's what we can do. You can get into a $3 or $4 million building, brand new development, and here's how it works. And so you can do it, and you already have the acumen to run it and to operate it. So imagine how efficient you're going to be, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's kind of the long answer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, speaking of labor, obviously, and there's a technology, the factor to it too. So the technology is going crazy these days,
Mhm.
especially with AI.
Oh yeah.
And have you could seen any kind of AI technology integrating to your business in a way? I don't know what way. And to for the next 10 years, what way it could change the senior living business itself and service overall.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, AI is going to enter every part of every industry just about, right? I'll get, I worked on an AI project a couple years ago before AI was even really a popular term. And before people, in my opinion, started misusing the terminology artificial intelligence, right? Artificial intelligence in my businesses means that you are learning from things that have transpired, and then you are spitting back out what we can do so those things don't happen again, right? So I'll give you. We talked about falls on part one, right? And how I can't stop people from falling, but I can reduce the risk. I worked on a project where I believed, and I sought out this company, that we could reduce falls based on tracking residents' gait and walking speed. And then by collecting all that data, I could look at it and decide which resident is prime and ready for occupational therapy or physical therapy, which in turn would strengthen them up and reduce the likelihood of them falling and going out to the hospital and maybe never coming back, because that's typically what happens. And so what we were doing is we were using these um, sensors and radars and things and lasers and things like that would track a resident every time they walked by a particular monitor. And there were multiple monitors and tracking devices. And then from that, it was going into an artificial intelligence program that was then spitting back out to us. Here is the prediction of their fall. They will fall within this amount of time if we don't do something. So, yes, artificial intelligence, it's coming, it's here, and it's been here for a little bit. We just haven't figured out the best use of it. Um, in terms of the business practices and so on and so forth, I mean, artificial intelligence is already being used to scan financials and pinpoint your areas of opportunities. We've been, if you're people like us, we've been looking at financials for a long time and telling people where they need to make changes at. It's the same process. What I find really interesting is I get presented by a group that develops robots, and these robots are providing cleaning services. And when you run the numbers, because I've done it like 1,000 times now, when you run the numbers, I hate to say it, but if I'm paying somebody to do floors at $15 an hour, and they're doing the floors in at this particular time of the day, I can probably buy a floor robot somewhere around $25,000 that cleans itself, dumps itself, GPS is the entire blueprint of the building, and then it releases itself, it closes itself up. I mean, so I think we're going to see a lot of that, because again, how are we going to get more efficient as the labor rate goes up? How are we going to get more efficient to try to keep the rent rate at a level that a large population can afford?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, no surprise to hear those AI efficiency benefits and all that stuff. It's going to get better and better from now on. On that, it was impressive. And what? But let's talk about the future potential residents, right? Everybody's talking about the baby
Oh,
boomers left, baby
mhm.
boomers right. So
Yeah.
from now on, it looks like it's going to really escalate, going to get bigger and bigger, the numbers. What do you see coming, like in a nutshell?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I can remember sitting at a conference table as an executive, and we were talking about the what's called the silver tsunami, and that's essentially the baby boomers aging to a point where they start looking for services or needing assisted services. I mean, so it's been out there for years. We've been talking about it. Um, you know, I think we can't keep up with the demand. We don't have enough supply. That's number one. We don't have enough supply. That population is going to be the largest segment of population age wise. I think it's going to be somewhere around 13 to 15% of our total population will be over the age of whatever 75 or something. So we can't keep up with the supply that's going to be coming. So therefore, and with new development on the decrease, right? New developments on the decrease right
Mhm.
now, primarily, I would imagine because of the capital is not cheap to get capital, right? So with that being said, the groups that can afford to get capital and develop, they're going to do very well. But we also too we have to start taking another look at things in terms of um, what we're hitting. There obviously there's an age demographic, but there's also a financial demographic. If you take a look at the majority of communities or facilities, years ago it was residential. You could someone bought a house and they had 4 or 5 beds in that house. Well, with the cost of labor, you don't see as much as that business model, primarily because one thing can shut you down, and one financial thing might be an HVAC, might be a roof, or what have you. You're not making enough revenue to offset the labor, so to speak. So what is a concern is if the average rate right now runs between $4,500 and $5,000 a month, and that's right now, and we're talking 10 years from now, and let's say that we're increasing 3% every year, ballpark, on rent rate. At 4,500, that's going to put us at, somewhere in the ballpark. That's going to put us over 5,000. At 5,000, that's going to get us closer. That's 3% every single year. So we're going to see a 30% increase in the next 10 years. Well, how many people in that silver tsunami can afford that average rent rate if we keep on this path, right? So the people that can develop and look at affordable senior housing in that have the biggest opportunity, because that's where the majority of the population is going to live at. They're going to live in that affordable realm, not at that luxury realm, right? So, in my opinion, that's where the biggest opportunity lies. And how do you do that? Well, if you're doing new development, then we got to do it with upfront build costs. How what are we doing to cut costs on the build up front? What are we doing to reduce the cost of labor? What are we doing to reduce our operating expenses overall? Are we employing AI? Are we employing, some of these other tools of the trade that are coming out? Are we looking at a new model altogether? Is there a new model out there where we're looking at it, and the only reason we haven't done it is because, oh, we need rent rate and care rate to get us over the hump, right? So yeah, that's going to be the largest segment of the population that produces the best opportunity. You will still have companies that go out and build $40 million projects, and they will get that 2% of that total population. They're striving for that 2% of that 15% or whatever silver tsunami, because those folks, they have $7,000 a month, they have $10,000 a month, they've saved for this, they've were an ex-CEO in their prior or something of that nature. They had generational wealth, whatever the case may be. But if we're all trying to compete for that dollar, when just down the road, maybe $1,000 less, $2,000 less per month, it exists, I don't know why we're not looking at it.
Yeah, awesome. So
Right.
in all of this, I can hear your thought leadership, I can hear your experiential leadership, but I really want to talk about you as a leader, you as the person who is the vice president, and just kind of go into what are some of the leadership principles that guide the way you run your day to day and the way strategically you run your industry. What are some of those leadership principles that people can tack onto so that we can say in 20 years from now, I've got 20 years experience in this space.
Yeah.
What can we do to be where you are? And what I mean, because there's something about you that makes this work. I mean, you've got the numbers, but there's something about you, let's be real, that enables this to
I,
happen. Can we go?
I mean, if this is an honest podcast, I was, I, I came into a female dominated industry,
Mhm.
right? And I was arrogant. I was cocky. I was aggressive. I was an alpha male. You weren't going to get in my way. The world can't stop me. The world is mine. I'm about to conquer it. I mean, I was all those things.
Yeah.
And I missed a lot, is what I would say, because I was only centered on me and my own personal success, and nobody was going to stop me. I had it in my mind. I remember when got the first job within the senior living landscape, and I had a lot of success in the sales piece. You couldn't tell me anything, right? I was fortunate enough to have a mentor that would take me out into the parking lot, and she gave me what she called parking lot speeches. And that basically what that means is I was about to get ripped into. And she taught me a lot. She put me on the right path, and she was the one that said, you know, you, you know, use what you've learned in the past. So coming from like an athletic background, I tend to lean on that quite a bit. I lean on the idea and principles that if you know you can't do it by yourself. You know, if you're on a team sport, it takes everybody. Everybody plays a role in it, and everybody should get the accolades and the accommodations as well. You should be able. You should, when you walk into a community, um, you're not better than anyone. You need to say you walk in and you want to know how people are doing genuinely. How are you doing? You know, um, if someone asks me to do something and I can do it, I do it. It's pretty simple, right? Um, uh, and that comes with staff. And what you do for one, you got to be willing to do for all. If you give special services to one, be prepared. It's a community. It's a gossip train, right? So you better be prepared to do it for the rest of everybody else. If you can't do it from a leadership perspective, you have to be honest and say, I'm sorry, we just can't do that. But here's what I can do. You know,
Right.
um, I used to, treat people how you want to be treated, right? And I'm going to be honest with you, that doesn't always work because you motivate and treat people how they want to be treated, but they also too, they may be motivated completely different than how you're motivated. Some people are motivated monetarily. Some people are motivated by um, they just want people to be gracious. Some people are motivated because they want the pat on the back. Some people want public notification. You know, announce it during the staff meeting that this person did a great job. You can see it in their face. You have to take the time to learn how each one of your teammates is motivated. And if you don't tell people how you're motivated, that's on you.
I love
Some
that.
people are motivated with time off. Oh, why don't you go home early for the day? Oh my God, for real? Yeah. Why, you did a great job today. Thank you very much. I'll take up the rest of your shift. No worries. You know, y- that's the key, in my opinion. And that doesn't mean it's always going to work, but you have to try it.
I love that. I know, Selchuk, you have a question. I'm sure you do, but that was really good. Thank you for that. That was great leadership.
Yeah.
Great leadership advice there.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, we're gonna wrap it up here. And well, one last thing I would like to ask you, Chad. So, if you could give like a one piece of advice to someone looking to start or invest in this industry, like a senior housing care, so what would it be? I know if you ask like it's just a one thing, it's really hard to answer it, but it could be two too. But what's the like a one primary thing?
Well,
Whatever helps.
the funny answer is if I gave you one piece of advice before you did that, call me. I'll let you know. But that's the that's the funny answer. That they
Well, if you're gonna
probably
go there, like if you're gonna
yeah
go there, how
yeah.
can they reach you? If that's the case, how can they reach you?
Um, I the easiest way to reach me is through email typically. So that's easy.
We can put that in
Um,
the show notes if you
yeah,
like
you
to.
guys can put that in the show.
Yeah.
If you're going to invest in it, if you're going to invest in it, um, and you're not an and you don't have a skill set where you've ran one of these communities before, um, don't always get fooled by the numbers, right? You know, cap rate's good. It's a good indicator, but cap rate too can also show inefficiency. And if you have someone that's decent on your team with understanding how these things operate, you may be purchasing a building that has a risky cap rate, but the reality is that it can be fixed, right? So why is the NOI low in comparison to the value, the perceived value? Because right? That's cap rate, right? So why? Why is NOI low? Is the census low? Are the rates low? Is our labor high? Are our expenses higher than what they should be? Sometimes those are diamonds in the rough. So if you're investing, take a strong look at the efficient practices of said community before you just look at a final number and go, nope, not happening. Right. Um, as a owner operator, if you're going to get in there and get your hands dirty, um, give yourself be prepared. Routine is important. Sales is important. Build a culture that is geared around a sales culture attached to a strong quality customer service based culture, right? Um, I can provide you with great quality service and all services aside, but if I can't sell, I'm just going to be sitting in an empty building. You came to me because you have a need. I already know that. No one goes and just, oh, I want to price check assisted living. It doesn't happen. You came to me because you have a need. Now it's my job to understand what that need is for you or your loved one. Now, now I got to get on a path. I got to ask you the right questions. I have to sell you on what's important to you and to your mom, not what's important to me, but what's important to you. If you say food is important, we're going to spend a lot of time in the dining room. I'm going to send you home with meals. If I'm going to send meals to your house because food's important to you. So you got to build a quality service culture, but also a sales culture.
I love that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
This was great.
That
I
that
have another question now because you've just, as you're talking,
Go
the
ahead.
light bulb keeps going off. So, can you state, from your opinion, what are the benefits of investing in this asset class as a as a multifamily real estate investor on the GP side or the LP side? What would be, general partner, limited partner? What would be the benefit of being an investor and delving into this world?
Well, I mean, probably the biggest benefit is that it's probably one of the more stable business models to invest in, right? Again, go back to 2008, 2% growth year over year. I read that quite a few times. I was part of that 2008, and yet we were still moving people in on an occupancy standpoint. I think in 2008, I had one building in my portfolio that was operating at a 53% profit margin. 53% not NOI, profit. And then I had another
Wow.
building I had a couple other buildings that were 100% occupied. So it again, being a need driven business, it still is going to happen. If we lived if we were in another country where the culture was mom's coming home with me, maybe not as stable. But here in the States, culturally, we've set it up where you get to a certain age and then you move mom into a community, you sell her house, she has assets, right? So culturally, we've kind of set that up here. So it's stable. It's stable. And the returns, if you look at it, the returns are probably stronger than what you would earn on Wall Street.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
So,
And
you
it's,
know,
and it's more predictable, right?
yeah, I mean, it's a lot more predictable and probably can't be manipulated as well.
Well, you know what? That's a perfect wrap here, Chad. And this is thank you for all sharing your experience and perspective with us today. It just your insights that remind us that senior living isn't just a business. It's a mission, and the success in this business it just comes from leading with purpose and compassion. That's what it sounds like after listening to you, and building trust and the most importantly, you got to stay committed to the excellence at every level. because you're taking care of seniors at the same time.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, if you've been considering investing in or operating with assisted living business, just remember, it's one of the few asset classes where your business success directly improves people's quality of life. And so if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe that and to Multi-Millionaire podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues who's passionate about real estate, leadership, and the meaningful impact. Well, until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and stay multi-millionaire minded.